do my intro and we'll be good to go.
Great.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second annual parent virtual happy hour. I say annual because we're going to be doing these for the remaining months of the academic year. But if they're popular, maybe we'll continue moving on with them. For those of you who don't know, my name is Felicia, and I am one of the University of Rochester Upward Bound academic advisors. And I'm so excited to be here today to talk to you about a topic that actually one of you as parents brought to us, and that's college entrance exams. There's a lot to them. We're going to throw a lot of information at you, but don't fear because there's plenty of opportunities for you to ask us questions, either in the chat, which is to the right of your screen. Go ahead, throw in questions you have there. Throw your name in there too, so we know who's here with us chatting, or go ahead and text me any questions you have. Again, text me to let me know you're watching. You want to text me and let me know you're watching because we have a humidifier on the line. I don't know about all of you, but being stuck in my house for these past couple of months has made things, I just need some fresh air. So I think if I could use a humidifier, maybe you could use one. And they're just a lovely thing to have. And we'll go with that. But I am very excited again to have you here talking about college entrance exams. Before we get into that, though, I do have some updates that I want to share program-wide. The first and foremost being that tomorrow is going to be our last day of Zoom tutoring. If your student has come to Zoom tutoring, then they will know we have Zoom tutoring from 3 to 5, Tuesday, Thursday. Again, tomorrow's the last day. If they need the Zoom link, just feel free to text one of our advisors, text the number that's going to be on your screen shortly, or respond to a remind message, and we will go ahead and let you know. Other than that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to a PowerPoint we have, because on the same field of academics, I want to share some updates that RCSD actually sent out about the fourth marking period grading. I'm going to pull this from a letter that was sent on May 7th. If you have not received it, it's available on the RCSD website. And if you have trouble locating it, go ahead and text one of the advisors, text this number on the screen, and we will go ahead and send it to you so you can read it out in its entirety. But some things I want to point out and highlight, especially regarding our high school students, is that students in grades 6 through 12 should and will have the opportunity to improve any first, second, or third marking period grades by working with their classroom teacher. So if they want to work on whether it's makeup work or see what they can do to improve their grades, definitely have them reach out with their teacher to figure out what the expectation would be or what that would look like. On that same grading expectation note, things have changed for marking period 4 to accommodate the remote learning. So on your screen, it says students grades 6 through 12 will receive one of the following grades for the fourth marking period. They will either receive a pass with distinction, noted as PD, and that'll be a grade 85 to 100 range, a pass, which is the grade equivalent of a 65 to 84, or an incomplete, which is a grade equivalent to 0 to 64. Again, this is what they're doing for the fourth marking period grades. So depending on what they do as far as assignments, class interactions, things like that, just continuing encouraging your students to participate, reach out to their teachers and communicate. But with that, the way final course grades are going to look this year is the same system. Teachers have been instructed to do a holistic review. So both before we started remote learning, like when we were in the schools, and since we have been remote learning the past few months, each teacher should go through, see if the student has learned the material, demonstrated competency with that, and make the decision based on that. That will fall within the pass, distinction, pass, or incomplete. If there's any questions you have about that, definitely reach out to us, reach out to your student's teacher. Anything we can do to clarify that, let us know. And again, if you need a copy of the letter because you haven't seen it, we can go ahead and share that with you, but it's on our CSD website if you want to look for yourself. I also want to make a note about Regents exams. I think everyone has been made aware that June Regents exams have been canceled, but all Regents exams, including August exams, have been canceled for this year. Any student who is currently enrolled in a Regents course and passed the class, such as they get a PD or a P, they will receive Regents credit. And any student who is scheduled to take a Regents exam in June or was scheduled to take a Regents exam in June will receive credit for the Regents exam. On that same note, if there's any clarification questions or you're unsure where you scheduled, where you're not scheduled, feel free to reach out to us and we can reach out to your counselor, reach out to your counselor directly. We just want to make sure all of this information has been shared. Again, go ahead and shoot us a text, drop your comment in the name or your name in the comments, and we can go ahead and share that information and get you connected to any answers you need. So I can't believe it's already May, almost June, but that means we get to talk about summer program. And those of you who are part of our Upward Bound family know how incredible summer program is. We are still doing it this year. We are still going to continue bringing you College 101, math, all your favorites. But we will be looking a little different this year. So our virtual program, it's going to be virtual, is going to be June 29th through August 7th. I will say that since it is a virtual program, we want to respect that, students shouldn't necessarily be sitting in front of a computer for 7-8 hours a day. So we're building a schedule that's going to bring all the knowledge, all the fun of summer program, but one that's reasonable and accommodating to students and what they need right now. How are you going to find out about that? By coming to our You Are Upward Bound Summer Town Hall meeting. So mark your calendars. It's going to be June 9th from 6:30 to 8. We're hosting it over Zoom, so you'll get probably a phone call from one of us, as well as an email about how to connect to Zoom. If you haven't used Zoom before and you need help, that's a great time to ask. We can make sure that it's set up. But all students and parents must attend. We're going to be sharing a lot of really important information. We're going to be sharing expectations, what we're planning on doing. And again, as you know, summer is such an important part of our family, so we want to continue it. If you have any questions before the town hall, you can go ahead and reach out, but the town hall is where we're going to share a lot of the good stuff. So with that, I'm going to take a break from the PowerPoint so I can introduce our guest. I am extremely excited to have with me Mr. Connell Boyle from Kaplan Test Prep. I will let him share a little bit more about who he is and what he's going to talk about today, but just again, very excited to have him here, very excited to chat more about test prep, which again, you asked us about, and I'm excited to bring this topic to you. So Connell, if you would like to go ahead and introduce yourself to our Upward Bound family.
Thanks so much, Felicia, and it's really an honor to be here. As I was introduced, I work at Kaplan Test Prep, and Kaplan Test Prep has been around for 80 years. Stanley Kaplan invented test preparation in his garage in Brooklyn to help some of the families in the area with state exams, with New York Regents, and of course, since that time, we've grown. We are always interested in supporting Upward Bound. We work with Upward Bound programs across the country. I feel like because our missions are so similar, the relationships are always so strong and long lasting. So yeah, it's great to be here. I'm happy to share what I've learned in at Kaplan over the past 13 some years with you, and hopefully give you some guidance to help kind of navigate through some potentially uncertain times. We have a PowerPoint presentation, and we're going to walk through some of these slides, and I'm happy to answer any questions at the conclusion. Okay, SAT versus ACT. This is the question that puzzles some potential test takers and parents of test takers, and so let's before we kind of like walk through and do the side by side, I think the rule of thumb is do this based on data, right? Do this based on what you know about yourself as a student, rather than what you hear, because I feel like this is a very kind of personalized choice. And even though you may have a cohort of students that you study with for, particular exams through your high school career, like regents and things like that, uh, you may end up taking, or you may end up taking a path for one of these tests that might be different than those other students, and that's completely okay, because it should be based on where you would perform better. So let's dive into it on the next slide.
It's not letting me go to the next slide.
It probably really
There we
likes what I
go.
have to say. Oh, okay, great. So I listed out some things here. It's a little slow on the draw, but there we go. So you really want to look at the core features of both of these tests and just understand what's here. So at the end of the day, the SAT and the ACT are just both really hard tests, right? There's really no getting around it. They have rigorous math, they have rigorous reading. So as the student, it's really up to you to kind of get into the fine kind of details within each and see if there's something there that might suit you a bit better. The essay, what I could say about both tests is, unless you're, well, what I could say about both tests in present day is colleges and universities will accept either wherever you apply. So it is not necessary to do both. And that goes back to the point, take the test that is a better fit for you. If you look at both these tests side by side, you will see that the ACT has an entire section dedicated to science. And that science section is 25% of your total ACT score. So if you are a student that has a particularly strong science background and you're scoring well in your biology and your chemistry, chances are this test might be better suited for you. So if we go into the next slide, we can see how these tests are kind of where the different subject areas are distributed. And I think this is important because the math on the SAT takes up a much more significant portion of the test. And so if you're a stronger math student, it may make sense to gravitate towards this test because it gives you a wider platform to kind of demonstrate your stronger math ability. And if we go to the SAT, or the ACT rather, sorry, becomes a tongue twister over time. There's your reading and your writing. And if you move over to the ACT, you'll see that it's not quite as much math, right? Not to say that in by any means that there's a small amount of math, because that's just not the case, but it's just not quite as much as the SAT. So we have those things to think about when we look at these two tests. Ultimately, what you want to do is take some kind of practice scenario where you get a result, and compare that result with the other result from the other test. So if you took the PSAT, that's a result. Then it might make sense to take a practice ACT and compare those two outcomes and see where your strength is. Everybody loves a bar graph. Well, everyone on this side of my computer screen anyway. So I wanted to graph out what you can expect as far as distribution on both tests in another kind of visual way. And as you can see, the sciences far outweigh the sciences on the SAT when you're looking at the ACT. But that doesn't mean that there's no science on the SAT. And that's why this bar graph has value. There is not a science section per se on the SAT like there is on the ACT, but there is science within some of the reading comprehension questions. And so that's why it's listed here. There's also not a history section per se on the SAT, nor is there one on the ACT. However, there is history subject matter tackled within the reading comprehension sections. And so that's why this is listed out here. Again, if you were to look at this and you have a strong science background, I do think it kind of makes a lot of sense to gravitate towards the ACT. So let's go to the next slide. You'll see on the math, these two tests actually distribute in very similar ways. And the key kind of takeaway here is to really nail the algebra. What you want to do is find out specifically what kind of algebra is tested on these tests and what the most common kinds of questions are within that. While these tests are challenging and the kind of math is rigorous, it is very predictable. So if you look at test administrations, month after month, cycle after cycle, you start to see patterns. And so it makes sense to look at the specific kinds of questions that are asked and then get really, really good at answering them correctly. So what does your college admissions timeline look like? And where does SAT and ACT fit within this? And what about the PSAT? So I put in boxes what you can expect in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade, and how that all relates to kind of these tests. In 9th grade, there's really not a whole lot to do with your PSAT, your SAT, and ACT. That's a really good time to take your focus and apply it to your actual school and your course load. Come 10th grade, it makes sense to start to understand the SAT and the ACT and do those things that I talked about earlier. Take a practice test, see where your strength is, and then apply yourself to that one direction. As Felicia mentioned, it's the end of May, and we have this thing coming up called summer. And many of you are familiar with summer because there's no school. And it's the greatest opportunity for any 10th grader to get ready for the SAT or the ACT. And so few 10th graders do that, understandably, because the majority of students prepare for this exam, if you look at the 11th grade box, starting in 11th grade. And that's okay. There's so much to do in 11th grade starting in September, however. If you think about your course load at school, and then you think about the other the shift from a sophomore year to becoming a junior and all those other obligations, extracurriculars, plus think about everything that's getting pushed into September that we missed out in March, April, and May. So my advice has always been prepare for these tests in some way, in some meaningful way in the summer of your 10th grade if you can. And that advice is just compounded this particular school year. And then in the 12th grade, what you really want to do, well, I don't want to skip over 11th grade. So yes, and then in the 11th grade, take your PSAT, take the SAT or the ACT, or if you're still not certain, take both and figure out where your strength is. And then come 12th grade, if you need to take it one more time in that October administration of the SAT or the September administration of the ACT, then go ahead and do that. I want to also take a moment to address some of the changes. And actually, I think it's in the next slide. So maybe I won't jump the gun. Yes. So some of the big changes in the SAT and the ACT included recent cancellation of the tests, right? So the April ACT was canceled, the June SAT was canceled, and so these things have never happened. And the question had become, are future administrations of these tests going to get canceled? the College Board has, well, I haven't seen it on their website. I have seen them in interviews state that the August SAT, there's going to be an August SAT administration. There will be a September. I listed those dates here, and an October and a November. So they would like to have those in school buildings. And if they cannot, they are going to do at-home versions that students can take online. And so that's important to know, because you can feel confident they won't get canceled first. Second, you can work backward from either one of these test dates that you want to prepare for. So if you're taking the September SAT, you can plan to do some studying in August, do some studying in July, do some studying in June, and that is a lot of runway to spread out, however many hours you think you're going to need to prepare for this thing, and get ready and score well on this test. Same goes for the ACT. I listed out, there aren't any tests until September, but then there's, of course, September and October. So the key point I want to kind of reiterate is these tests are all about the test date and then backing out what you need to do to get the score you need to get in the school you want. And so keep that in mind. All right, so what I did for fee waivers, and I know these questions come up a lot, is I listed out specifically what the College Board says on their website regarding obtaining fee waivers. And there's also situations where your fee waivers won't come into play, like if you reschedule your test date. So I'm going to stop there. I'll let Felicia kind of illustrate this in a much kind of broader and more specific way. So Felicia, the floor is yours.
Yes. So let's talk fee waivers. I've gotten the question about how many fee waivers do I get? Right now for the SAT, you get 2 free fee waivers. That's if you come down to the Upward Bound office and you go ahead and we chat with you and we give you a fee waiver and we sign you up. But again, that's 2. So if you oversleep, you didn't prepare right, you scheduled too many different things that day and you missed your SAT, that's you missing a fee waiver that you don't get back. So these tests are expensive, man, and you don't want to pay for them. So please, take this seriously when it's scheduled for the date. Put it in your calendar. Let mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever is at home know you have to do this. Make sure you take off work, because if you heard me talk about how time is money, this is a very big way to waste your time / money if you miss this exam.
And I want to kind of address something that I'm not totally sure I set a slide up for, and that is what's happening with test optional, because I know that's something that's on people's minds. And so I wanted to address it by telling a quick story. I had the opportunity to talk with someone who had done work as a college admissions officer and literally sat in an office and reviewed files with students' applications. And I asked, what makes a student stand out? What's a way that a student can stand out in a non-obvious way, like in a way that I wouldn't think of, like other than like a high SAT score or a perfect GPA. And so they said, when we have to evaluate like multiple students for just one opening at a university or a college, the things that stand out are the things that the student that took on something hard, right, versus the students that did not. And so that could be a number of things, but whatever that is, that stands out. And so that's how you should look at test optional. Test optional does not mean you don't have to take the SAT or the ACT. I mean, it could mean that, but it also means that other students that take it and score well have an advantage. And so consider that and try to give yourself that edge, especially in an environment where the where people think these tests aren't required, because that is not the case, and you may actually have an edge over those candidates who don't submit an SAT or don't submit an ACT. Yes, you want to score well. You want to score within the range of what the college requires. And like I stated, you by no means want to skip these tests. So the golden rule of college admissions is, when in doubt, don't leave it out. And that is kind of what I've just been saying. And I think that goes for the essay just as much as it goes for this whole test optional thing. If you leave out the essay, college admissions officers have no reason given why you skipped it. So they could assume the worst, and you don't want that. So not only do you want to do the essay, you want to prepare for the essay, and you want to write something that is going to score you maximum points on the test if possible. So there's always exceptions, right? And if you have some kind of exception, you just want to make sure that it is documented. But other than that, the optional essay on the exam is something you can prepare for. With practice, you can perform well. So do it. And when you do score well, tell everyone you know that the man from Kaplan gave you this advice. So it wouldn't be a presentation from me unless I talked about preparation. Again, I work for a company called Kaplan Test Prep. And so here's what I have to say on the subject of preparation for the SAT or ACT. The key to preparing for this test in an effective way, in my opinion, is repetition. And I like to draw the analogy to chess. So anyone who's listening to this presentation who plays chess will appreciate this. But even if you don't, I think you'll kind of understand where this is coming from. Some of the greatest chess players in the world have stated that when they see a chessboard, they don't see the same things that someone like I would see, right? I don't play a whole lot of chess, but I do know the rules, right? Like I know that the horse is a knight, and I know that it can move in an L pattern, and I know that the bishop can move in a diagonal pattern. Chess masters look at a board and they see light coming out of the board. That's how they describe when they sit down and play a match. That's not what I see. And the reason they see that is not because they're brilliant, not because they were born with more intelligence than the average person. It's because they played so many chess matches. And so they see things that other people don't see because of repetition. And that's where you need to be on these tests. I'll give you another example. I live in New York State like you do. Folks in this Upward Bound program live in New York State. And so I'm a Jets fan, and you probably are a Buffalo Bills fan. And so we have a common enemy known as the New England Patriots. And the New England Patriots have a head coach named Bill Belichick. And Bill Belichick has so many championships. And a lot of that has to do with, I'll admit, it has to do with the ability to kind of like wheel out Tom Brady every Sunday. And that's fine. I'll give him that. However, he also has a reputation for studying game film more than any other coach. And by studying his game film, he is able to see how other teams that he needs to compete with are predictable. And over the years, he's been able to see how his opponents like Peyton Manning are predictable, and he's been able to adjust whatever he needs to do to win based on repetitions, watching over and over again. And so when you study for the SAT, you don't want, when you sit down on test day, you don't want to open that booklet and read the instructions, right? Like that's you want to open the booklet, you want to see these math problems, and you want to see patterns. You want to see things you're familiar with. You want to and you want to be able to apply quickly the strategies that you've practiced to the test day problems. And so hopefully this analogy helped. I like to use these to try to like open your mind to approaching this test. But I also like talking about the New York Jets. So I do that whenever I can in a presentation.
I just wanted to know that in our comments, we had a call out about Tom Brady. So we'll get to that later. But so thank you so much, Connell, for talking to us about the SAT and ACT. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the Accuplacer. And some of you are probably like, what is the Accuplacer? And let me tell you, it is an exam that we consider a college entrance exam because it doesn't necessarily mean if you get accepted or denied to a college. It's an exam to help you get placed into the correct English and math course, English or writing. Every college does it a little differently. So this exam might in some ways feel very similar to the SAT and ACT in structure. The SAT and Accuplacer are both held through College Board, but it's different in quite a few significant ways. The first similarity that you're going to feel is that the Accuplacer is composed of different test subjects. So there's reading, writing, math, and I broke down the math because it might be a little unfamiliar for some students. It's arithmetic, quantitative reasoning, algebra, and statistics, and then advanced algebra and functions, and then the right placer, which I'll get to in a little bit. So again, these subjects seem familiar because based on what Connell said, essentially this is kind of what composes the SAT and ACT because they want to gauge where you are in these foundational skills. The biggest difference though is that these tests, again, they don't determine whether or not you get accepted to college, where you're placed. These determine or these work through, and you actually don't take them like on pen and paper. These tests automatically are taken on a computer. A lot of the time you will have to take them at the college. So for our students around here, I'm most familiar with having students take it at Monroe Community College or MCC. So these students do have to go to MCC to take this exam. If you do want to go to a college that is farther away that you're required to take it, I would really suggest you reach out to the school, see if you actually have to drive there or see if you can do a remote or an off-site testing site. But that's something that you're going to have to ask about because otherwise you go to the college. Another thing too is this is a test that, again, not every college offers, but if you are going to a college like an MCC and you know like, oh, my friend, they have to take the reading and math one. You might not have to take either, or you might just have to take one. So where the SAT and the ACT, you sit down and you take the entire exam, these are broken into the different subjects based on your transcript, your Regents scores, any other materials you offer the college. You might not have to take any of them. You might only have to take one of them. So whenever you are told that you need to take this exam, you want to pay attention to what exactly you're taking. How do you know if you have to take this exam? A lot of the times you'll be told in either part of your acceptance letter, you'll get another communication, whether it's through an email or another letter, or it might be in your student portal. All of our seniors who are working through their student portal now can tell you that you log in and there's like a checklist you complete before you go to college. This could be something that's on your checklist if a college wants you to complete it, to do it, and then it won't be until after you complete this that you're able to build a schedule or move forward in some next steps. So that right placer that I told you I'd get back to, it's very similar to the SAT and ACT essay in that you will be given a certain amount of time to read a topic. So they'll propose a topic and you have to pick a stance on it. You don't get graded on whether or not they like that. Oh yeah, I agree with that person. You're getting graded on if you made a formative argument, you pulled in examples, you communicated your ideas clearly. Um, so this, in a way, feels a lot like those two exams, but again, it's shorter in some ways. You might not have to take the whole thing. You really have to pay attention to that. You have to go to school and take it. But the other thing too is this exam actually like adjusts as you take it. So you're sitting at a computer and two people could be taking the same exam next to each other, but they might end up answering different questions because the way you answer a question is going to result in how the next questions come. Again, this is going to be because they want to gauge where you are. If this class is, or this test is determining what class you're in, they don't want to put you in a class that's going to be too easy for you. And they don't want to put you in a class that's too difficult and set you up for failure. They want to fit you just right where it's okay, this is like not too difficult, but like I'm going to challenge myself. I'm a real college student. I'm going to make progress and I'm going to learn. So this exam really should be taken seriously if you have to take it. I've had students that are like, oh, whatever, I'll get it through it. But you want to take it seriously. You want to give your time and effort to it. Speaking of time, this test isn't timed. Um, I've heard stories where students finish it in less than 90 minutes, but I know another college that says plan out at least 4 hours to take it. Um, so you're going to go ahead and take it. And then at the end of this exam, however long it takes you, because it's not time, so you can take your time and you want to put your best foot forward, you're actually going to get your score right away. With the SAT and ACT, I know we all have to wait a little bit before we get our score, and then everyone gets it on the same day, and we're opening emails, and it's so exciting. But at the end of the test, you know what you got. So a lot of colleges will then have you set up a meeting with your advisor right after. You might not know exactly what the score means, but that score that you get is going to tell your advisor what class to put you in that would be appropriate. So this exam is really important if you do have to take it, and I would like you to very much take this seriously. So let's say that you get that letter, you have to take the Accuplacer, now what? Well, there's some things you can do. First of all, you take practice exams. As Connell said before, and I cannot continue to reiterate, practice, practice, practice. Sometimes it's not even the content per se that trips you up. It's the idea of, I haven't taken a test in this format before. So if you can take the Accuplacer and have a computer, you can, through College Board, have like a practice test where you go through and it's like a simulated exam on the computer. If you haven't done that before, it can be really intimidating. I know the first time I took my exam on the computer was for my GRE. And I was like, what is this? Like, I would use to buy paper and pen, what's going on? So you just want to familiarize yourself with it. And as I said, there's an app for that. The little icon, like with the purple computer you see, is from College Board's website. You can start practicing and you can get this app on your phone, or you can use it on your computer. It's pretty friendly for either device. And if you need help getting to that, the link is right here in green. So if you want to, come back to the video later, pause it, copy it, you can do that. Or you can always just like search Accuplacer on College Board and you'll be able to connect it there. So just go ahead and practice. There's exams you can download. There's like live exams, practice exams you can take. Just practice, practice, practice. Also figure out what you need to bring for the test. Most common, you'll need an ID. If you go to a college where you have like a person number, or like I know MCC sometimes calls it like the M number, have that prepared too if you need that. If they need any other documentation from you, if you need to bring whatever they need, and if you have to be prepared to have a meeting with your advisor right after, just make sure you're aware about what you need to do when you're there. Also be aware about what you can't bring. So think about it like kind of like school where you have to turn off your phone and turn your phone in. You like if someone drives you or you go with a friend or something, have them hold on to it, turn your phone off for the exam. If you take the math exam and you need a calculator, you don't have to bring one. They're going to provide you one on the screen. It'll show up for the questions that you need a calculator for. So just be aware, this is a college exam. So you're going to be expected to follow the college rules, follow what you need to do. Make sure you show up on time, especially if you have to make an appointment. I know a lot of schools will have you make an appointment for it to go to their testing center. So just make sure you're prepared in all sense. And then give yourself plenty of time. Like I said, for some schools, they say, oh, you can finish it in 90 minutes. For other schools, they've said at least 4 hours to dedicate yourself. You don't want to have to rush from school, start your exam, worry about getting to work on time. Um, make sure you have enough time. Make sure it's also not a stressful day for you. So if something happens where you're like, you have a really big like a social studies exam, maybe that's not the same day you take your Accuplacer because you want to make sure you're in a good state. You want to make sure you have like a full belly, eat some lunch or whatever you need to do, to make sure that you're, again, putting your best foot forward, because you don't want to be put in the wrong level of class, especially starting off your college journey. So these are some tips and things about the Accuplacer that you might not have heard about before. So we have reached the portion where it's just time for questions. Please go ahead and send me questions, type them in the chat, text them to this number. We did have a couple come through, Connell, so we'll start with those. But are you ready?
Yep.
All right. So someone said, do colleges prefer one test over the other? I think you already talked about that, but do you want to touch on it a little bit more?
Sure. So no, generally no. And so you want to understand what colleges, you want to look at the college's website and look at the admissions requirements and see what the range of their SAT requirement is and what the range of their ACT requirement is. And then it's up to you to figure out which test you have a better chance of getting within that range. Now, you can take it from me, which isn't a bad idea. I'm definitely a resource and I'm kind of in the industry. But what I really recommend you do with these kinds of like qualitative questions is ask them of your of the admissions people at the colleges. You have so many opportunities to kind of interact with them, whether it be during school visits or college fairs or things like that. Now, of course, you don't want to ask them things that you could see on their website. You want to do your homework, but you do want to ask them those kind of between the lines questions, because A, it shows that you're interested in the school, and B, you might pick up some good advice.
All right, thank you. And that actually flows to another question that came through. What questions should I ask a college about the SAT and ACT? I'm going to go ahead and jump in. I have a friend who used to work in an admissions office, and we actually were talking about this the other day. And she said that she would get a lot of questions about, do you prefer one or the other? But also just ask them, what do you like to see in a holistic student? We can touch on this a little bit more, but colleges do look at you in the college application pie, if you remember from College 101. Where it's not just your SAT and ACT. Yes, those are important, but it's also your grades. It's also your extracurriculars. It's what makes you a student and a person. So go ahead and ask colleges, like you can ask them what they prefer, but they're going to say either or is fine. Ask them too if they need you to take an SAT subject test. We haven't really touched on that much, but we could probably a little bit. But see if for a specific major, do you have to take a subject test and see what that timeline would be like. I would also recommend you ask them maybe when is the latest I can send a test score in. I know that for some schools they offer scholarships that if you go ahead and take the test at later, score a better score, you can send it in and you might qualify for a better merit scholarship. Not every college does this, so you have to ask. But those questions like that, just anything that can show one that you're interested, but two, like Connell was saying earlier, like they're going to want to see the student that's not just going to take the easy way out. If you're willing to work hard to get a better score, if you're willing to take that SAT subject test, if you're willing to even take the test, use those 2 fee waivers. They're yours. Use them. Show them that you took the test the first time, you did some practice, you worked hard, you got more familiar with it, and then you scored better the second time. They're going to take that into account. I just kind of ran with that, Connell. I don't know if you have anything
That
else
was
to
great.
add.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. It gave me a chance to think about something I might not have said if I started, which was ask if you can super score, right? So some schools do, most schools do, not every school does, and it's worth, of course, checking on the school's website. But super score is if you take the SAT in August and you get a 500 in math, and you get a 500 in the reading, and then you take the SAT in September, and you get actually that's a horrible example. You get, so say you take it in August, you get a 500 in math and you get an 800 in reading, and then you take it again in September and you get an 800 in math and a 500 in reading. If the school allows a super score, you could take the 800 from those two different administrations, combine them for a better score, even though it wasn't for the same when you sat for, one test. It was sitting for two tests. There's your super score. I don't know if I don't I don't know if I if this term is used or if we came up with it at Kaplan, but there's also Franken scoring, kind of like Frankenstein. So some schools will allow you to super score a an ACT reading with an SAT math, and so it's not common, but it has happened. So take the opportunity to ask about that if you're going to ask about these tests.
Mhm. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. If you would like to send us questions, please go ahead, or drop them in the comments. But on a similar note to that, something that I've talked about with some colleagues who work in admissions offices is the question of ACT super scoring. That's not always what colleges do, so make sure you ask. And that's another good question to ask, especially if you're somebody you've taken both exams and you just feel like the ACT is a better fit for you. Um, and another side note too, it's always good to ask, because the more that you talk to the admissions reps and you ask these questions that aren't just like, do you have biology as a major? Or like, again, questions you can Google on their website. It shows them that you have a dedication to the school, and it shows them that you are genuinely interested. So especially the schools that you really, really like and that you do want to go to, take the time to be thoughtful and think about these questions. Um,
Something I'd like to chime in
mhm,
on regarding the ACT, a new feature of that test is the ability to retest,
mhm,
uh, and and do so only in one of the four areas tested. So if you had a strong reading, okay, if you had a strong reading, English, and science, and not a strong math, and you wanted to retest, instead of having to sit for all four sections, you can just sit for the math. And that gives you an opportunity to do many things, like focus, not have to stress about the other three, things like that, and be super strategic. So really nice feature that the ACT provides. Watch closely to see what the SAT does to match, in similar ways. But as of right now, that is something being offered by the ACT. So look into it. And if you feel like, again, whatever test is a better fit for you is the right test. So if you feel like that kind of thing suits you well, that might be something to get you going in that direction.
mhm. So, Connell, we had a question come in on the comments that said, how much time should I devote to prepping for the SAT weekly as a 10th grader, an 11th grader, 12th grader?
That's a good question. It is dependent on the individual, but I will say this. There was a study done, and it was the average amount a student studies for the SAT, and the answer was, the average amount of hours student does to study for the SAT, all in, right? Every possible thing that they could do to get ready for this test, and the average amount of hours was 5. So 5 hours isn't a heck of a lot to study really for anything, especially a high stakes test. And so you want to take this test much more seriously than the average student in terms of the hours that you study for it. I would recommend, if you can, when you if you're I would say if you're a sophomore, you have much more time. So you could take it in small pieces, right? You could take time, you can use that time to really familiarize yourself with the test, and get used to the question types, and start to understand what the strategies are and try to apply them over and over again. Um, and then as a junior, you really want to work on a plan to understand when you want to take the test, and then how many hours you can commit over the weekend, during the weekday, uh, right through and up till test day. And so I think, to get, and so like that's my answer. I know you're looking for me to say 30 hours or 60 hours, but really it personally, it might take me 60 hours. And my older sister, who scored much better on the SAT, it probably took her 30 hours. And honestly, our older brother, who went to Duke University, I think he, spent 5 cents in overdue fees to the library getting a SAT book. And I'm pretty sure he just flipped through it, and he probably spent about, 5 hours studying for the test. So it's up to you personally. Past is prologue with this test. So however, if you've taken a high stakes test, you know yourself, you know what you need to do to get these things done. And you know, use the gauges that are available. Your PSAT is an outcome. Like if you got a particular score on that, and you know the kind of score you need, that's going to be part of what you need to tackle. And you have to make a plan ahead of time that you can commit so many hours to get that done, and measure yourself along the way with additional practice tests, so that you know you're making progress. So I feel like that's the clearest and kind of the most professional answer that I could give to that question. And it
Yeah,
was a bit long, so sorry about that.
no, it's good. Thank you. And I think too, something that we did this year in the school sites is we had uh, Danielle. Those of you who know Danielle, you might remember this. She came in, and something else she talked about too was the idea of just like taking practice. So like if you know yourself in a high stakes test, just preparing yourself by actually maybe taking a practice test, or even just practicing filling in those answer bubbles. I don't know what you kids are doing in school, but are you filling in answer bubbles for your exams? So just anything that you can do to make yourself prepared and know yourself. If you are somebody who like you do it once and you got it, and I'm so happy that that's who you are, but I know that's not who I am. I need to practice, whether it's doing the same type of problem, whether it's just getting used to taking a multiple choice test, because I don't remember the last time I did that. um, just know yourself. I'm just repeating what you're saying, Colin, but just know yourself and know what you need, and dedicate what you can to it. I think that you would agree with this, but like you can't be over prepared for this exam. um, it, if you spend 5 6 7 however many hours a week doing it, then that's what you do it, and then you get the score you get, and it can't hurt you doing it. Also, plug, if you are going ahead and doing SAT prep with us, those count as college bound points, and you want to rake up those points because we've had some pretty great prizes going out. um, Side to the next question. So where do I take my exam? Um, do you want to give a little brief, and then I can jump into with more Rochester specifics?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much. I think your response to this is going to be much more meaningful. My only answer is wherever it's given, but please feel free to kind of specify.
Yeah, no. So wherever it's given is the truth. You have to, when you register for the exam, there's different, typically at a school, they have different assigned seats. So with registering for the SAT and ACT, when you know you want to take it, the sooner the registration, typically the better, because then you're sort of guaranteed that you can take it at the schools. I know in Rochester, it's typically at Soda and East High. And I've had a student who registered like later than most other people had registered, still able to sign up for the exam, but they were able to, like, East High is closer to their house, but then they had to take it at Soda. So just, when you are ready to take the exam, sign up as soon as possible. But the good thing is that there are a couple locations in Rochester. So that's good for your students to know. And I want to segue to another question that came in about the day of the exam. Some things that you need, some things you need to know. How does the day of the exam look? And Connell, if you're okay, I'm going to just kind of give my little checklist because this is what I've seen students need throughout the checklist or throughout their SAT day. You need your SAT ticket. You can come down to the Upward Bound office, like the Friday or Thursday before, get it printed. Remember to print it off at the library, but you need your SAT and ACT ticket in order to get in. In addition to that, you're going to need your ID, whether it's your school ID from the current school year or if you have your driver's license or permit, that, but you're going to need an ID, your ticket. You need a ride. Let's be honest, like you got to make sure that, if Big Bro or whoever's giving you a ride there, they're going to get up and get you there on time. We always recommend you to get there by 7:30, no later than 7:45. Is that a little early? Yes, but then you're guaranteed to get in because we've had students walk up to the testing doors and they won't let you in because it's late. So you'd rather be earlier rather than later. Yes, it's a Saturday. Yes, it's early, but you've heard us talk this whole hour about how important this exam is. So just be prepared, know ahead of time when you're taking it, and have those things. Another thing is to have pencils, not mechanical pencils, but you need number 2 pencils. At least that was the last I knew. Um, and if you can have like a little snack or a water bottle, have that with you, and a calculator. Read through specifically, like, are graphing calculators allowed? Yes or no? Last I knew they were allowed. Just make sure you have all those things. But again, have a ride, have your SAT ticket, have your ID, have a number 2 pencil, and that's a great place to start for what you need the day of. And it looks like we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. And this one came from a parent, but so as a parent, how can I help my student prepare for this exam?
Make sure they're studying. I worked with a parent who had utilized Kaplan's on-demand SAT program. So it's an online. There's probably like 30 hours of instructional videos and hundreds of quizzes and 2 practice tests, and all that will not raise your score if you never log in. And that's what I told the parent. And so she really took that to heart. And I saw her probably, this was through a school partnership. So I was on campus at the school like various times throughout the year. And I saw her, we bumped into each other at whatever other kind of event we had at the school. And she came up to me and she said that she forced her son to log in, uh, take advantage of the prep program, do the practice tests, the quizzes, spend the time doing all the required work on the platform, and he improved his score to whatever he needed. But she thanked me for giving her that advice, and I told her it's really the student, right, that did all the work, but it is really the secret sauce to kind of stay on top of them. And I do think, consider what, you know, ask what their prep plan is. Like, consider what they're utilizing to study, or what they're utilizing to kind of get ready for this test. And if it's an online study platform, I know, Kaplan has a username and password, share that with the student, or have the student share it with you, so you can log in, see what their progress is, see the assignments that they've completed, see what their practice test results are, so you can really kind of partner and help kind of like lead the charge, like the mother in the story I just told.
Yeah, and I'm gonna add on to that again, when I was just talking about like students, make sure you have a ride. Parents, can you give them a ride? Can you help arrange for the ride? Can you, you know, um, make sure that they're good to go? Know when their test is, know that the night before, okay, they got to get to bed early, and help them remember to get up early the next morning too. Um, as we say with all of our parents in Upward Bound, this is really a team effort. So we want to work together. We want to, we're encouraging your student, you encourage your student, and we're going to lead to good things. Our time is just about up, and I want to give a huge thank you to Connell again for joining us and sharing so much good information. It's been really great. I'm excited to learn more about this Franken scoring you mentioned. Um, but thank you again so much for taking the time out of your schedule. And thank you to the parents who are watching for taking time out of your schedule. My last little plug is going to be, we have another virtual parent happy hour scheduled for June 17th. And during that one, we will be discussing fly-in programs and overnight visit programs. So I hope you can tune in then too, and be on the lookout to see who won the humidifier. All right, everyone, have a great night. Enjoy some of the sunshine that we thankfully have here in Rochester, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Felicia. I appreciate it.